there, welcome to the garden. I'm getting out here midday. As you can see, it is super bright, but I didn't really get a chance to water the garden fully this morning, so I thought I would just make sure that I get everything watered, turn the sprinklers on and everything like that. I've been planting some seeds over the last few days, and so I'm trying to keep the top level of the soil really wet and make sure it doesn't dry out too much because I want these seeds to germinate. And I'm also going to replant a little basil today, so I just thought I would show you what we're doing with that. But I am starting to see a little bit of sprouting. So I planted zinnias. This is where I planted the button box mix zinnias, and we're starting to see them sprout. And these zinnias, I was talking about how quickly zinnias grow and what a quick turnaround from a direct sow flower. I think I planted these 2 days ago. I think it was 2 days ago. Yeah, that would be right, 2 days ago. And they're already coming up. This is why, especially when it's warm out, they're such a quick turnaround flower. It's so rewarding. If you are very impatient in your garden, like I am, I want to see results quickly. Something like that just goes from seed to growing so fast is really nice. And I've been able to keep this container well watered, which is definitely helping that germination process. I wanted to check in this bed where I planted the pumpkins and the melon. Again, it's only been like a day. I think that's a weed. I see a seed here. I gotta get him under the soil. Okay, so no germination yet, but obviously it's only been a couple days, and zinnias are just that much. There's another one coming up. They're all over in here. Zinnias are just that much faster. They're just so wonderful. So I've got baby girl here with me now. The nice thing about having my drip system, sprinkler system, is that it's pretty easy to water one-handed, which is a big part of my gardening life right now. So I'm going to turn that on in a second, but I want to pop in a few more basil seeds. I have been struggling with basil this year, which is really bizarre. I had some seeds that I started indoors, and I kind of planted them out while they were still pretty small, and they're just going really slowly. And then I also, sorry, the lizards are always running around in the garden and they distract me because I keep thinking they're snakes, but they're just the little lizards. But anyways, yeah, my basil is just not taking off. Some of it that I have as starts is still going really slow, and the things I've direct seeded are not coming up very thickly. I don't know what it is. So here is the basil that I had from starts. It's just barely now starting, and this is, I think, purple opal basil, which I don't know, it should just be growing as fast as any other basil. There really isn't any reason it should be growing so much slower. And then the other basil I'm going to resow. I'm going to resow some of this red Freddy basil if I'm able to get it away from baby girl let's try not to spill it everywhere. I planted some basil in my bed over here next to my patty pan squash, which honestly I don't really need to resow it because the patty's pan squash is probably going to take up a lot of the space. I threw basil right in here in this sort of empty spot, and as you can see, it's just not, only a couple plants took, and they just don't look very good. They're really tiny. I guess actually I really probably shouldn't put basil there because it will just end up getting crowded out by those squash that are looking good and are going to continue to get bigger and bigger and really fill in this whole space. Well, let me look around and see if there's anywhere else where we can put basil. The garden is in a really good spot right now. I'm super happy with how it's looking. It's just feeling really good. The fishies are happy in the container pond. I actually got a new fountain I'm going to try out in here, which I'm kind of excited about. I could just give you a little update on the whole garden. And I think a container like this one right here would be absolutely perfect for basil. It gets a little bit of midday sun, but also some shade, so it won't get too hot, which would hopefully help the basil keep from bolting. And this is where I had some lettuce, and I also, that stick in there is my fig tree, which sadly did not winter over. So I could clear it out, which I may have to do at a different time. I do a lot of planning when I've got baby girl out here in the garden, but it gets a little tricky to to execute the garden tasks with her, but that's okay. It's good for me to get a little bit of a more clear idea of what I want to do in the garden. So I'll just look around now and see if there's any other spaces where I could throw in some basil. There's so many things just about to bloom. I'm gonna have to do a full garden tour here pretty soon, but there's like a couple flowers I want to let get really blooming before I do that. All right, we're gonna plant the basil. Let's put it, you know what? Let me pull out that lettuce and we'll just pop it in the top of it. So this is my fig tree, and I think the only reason that it didn't make it through the winter was because it was in a container and we got a really deep cold snap, and it probably was just way too much for the fig. Just being in a container, its roots were able to get a little bit too cold. I just tried to pull it out when I took out the basil, and there's still some flecks in the branches, so I don't know. There might still be some life in this container. All right, got baby girl in her jumper, which is like garden parent best friend. So I just pulled the lettuce out of this container, and I mean, I don't think there's any chance that this is still alive, although there's still a lot of flecks in the stem, and it feels like it's kind of, let me break it here. Let's see, it's green. Okay, I feel bad. I just broke off the tip of this plant, but you can see it's still green in there, so it's definitely still alive. Okay, so we're not going to pull out the fig. This is a Chicago hardy fig. I believe it's hardy down to a zone 5, so it should have survived our winters, even in a container. And it may just be one of those things that is really slow to get going in the spring. Now I did just break off a little twig, but that's not going to be a problem for it long term. I'm gonna plant a tiny bit of basil around it just in case it doesn't start growing. I can always harvest the basil and just use it for cooking if I feel like it's kind of choking out the plant too much, or they can grow together, and we'll see. But this way something's happening in this bed. I'm gonna just sprinkle. I have just a few more seeds left, so I'll just sprinkle them in there right along the top. All right, so that is Red Freddy Genovese basil. I've had these seeds for a while, so it was time to really use them up. But it's a really fun basil because it is fully Genovese basil. It's culinary basil. You can use it any ways you would use a normal green Genovese basil or sweet basil or something like that. But it's purple in color, kind of purple, and has like little splashes of green. So it's just a bit more decorative, just something a little different. And it's nice for growing in a container like that because it almost looks a little bit like a coleus or something that's kind of intentional in that way. So I like to use that kind of a basil when I'm doing a container, just to add a little bit of foliage interest. And as I said, I think that pot is going to be perfect because it's in a bit of like basically part shade, and in the summer I find that my basil does pretty well in part shade environment. It just helps it to stay a little bit cooler, and I deal with maybe a little bit less bolting, which is kind of like the biggest issue that I have with basil. So we've got that planted. This is kind of what the stage that we're at in the garden now. We're just sort of switching out a few containers, finding spaces to put things. I'm gonna do probably a round of green beans in a lot of my lettuce containers because we are sadly getting to the end of lettuce season. It's starting to get hot out. Even today, it's in like the high 70s Fahrenheit, and so it starts to be too hot for the lettuce. So since I did not water the garden this morning, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the sprinkler system, just get a little bit of water on the containers. I've been trying to fertilize the containers just about every day that I'm watering with a really diluted, just like half dose of fertilizer. Although I just did that yesterday, so I think I'm just gonna use the hose today and just give everything a quick drink. We're getting rain tomorrow too, so I know it's gonna be, I just don't want to oversaturate the garden too. I'm trying to be kind of mindful with my watering when we have rain coming, to not overwater in the day or days right before we get a rain, because we tend to get so much rain in our area that it can kind of be too much almost for the garden. But luckily, with all the seeds that I just planted and everything coming up, the rain is perfect. That is just what we need with all of those seeds planted. Well, we've got the garden all watered in. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.